Hey guys, Stephen Cox here, and today we're going to learn a method for learning songs on the spot or very quickly. So this works really well if you have some friends that know a little bit of music theory and can tell you some information about the song. So if you like videos like these, please subscribe below, and there'll be information in the description on how to get the tabs for this video. So this method involves 5 steps, so let's jump right into it. The first thing we need to know in order to learn songs pretty quickly is we need to memorize the note names up to the 5th fret on every string. So that means we don't need to memorize all this stuff, but it would be a really good idea for us to know, especially the E string and the A string, but really all the way down to the G string. So let's do that really quickly. The open E string is an E note. The 1st fret on the E string is an F. The 2nd fret's an F sharp. The 3rd fret is a G. The 4th fret is a G sharp. And the 5th fret's an A. So then on the next string, we've got the open A string. That's an A. Then we've got the 1st fret, which is an A sharp. The 2nd fret is a B. The 3rd fret's a C. And the 4th fret is a C sharp. And the 5th fret's a D. So now we're going to move down to the D string. Open is a D. 1st fret is a D sharp. 2nd fret is an E. 3rd fret is an F, 4th fret's an F sharp, and 5th fret's a G. Now we're on the G string. So we got an open G, then the 1st fret's a G sharp, then we have an A sharp, a B, and then we have a C. So that was 0 through 5th fret on every single string. Now when you're going to memorize these, that's a lot to remember all at once. What I would recommend is learn 1 string a day and then quiz yourself on it. We'll go with the E string first. You go E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A. And then you're like, where's the G? Okay, that's 3rd fret. Then you go, where's the F? Oh, okay, that's 1st fret. So you can quiz yourself on that. Then the next day, add a string to it. So first you go over the A string by itself, and then you add the A string to the E string when you quiz yourself. So that way you're learning every string and not forgetting the ones you learned the previous day. So you should be able to do this in about a week. It may take some people more like a month depending on how good your memory is. Now that we have our notes memorized, it's time to learn a major scale pattern. So this is step 2. We're going to learn a pattern that we can move around to become different major scales without having to do a different combination of fingers. So first we're going to start with G major. So we're going to start on the G on the E string, which is that 3rd fret on the E string. We're going to use our middle finger for that. Then our pinky is going to get the 5th fret, which is an A, still on the E string. Then we're going to go down to the 2nd fret of the A string with our pointer finger. We're going to play B. Then our middle finger is going to get the 3rd fret on the A string, which is C. Our pinky is going to get the 5th fret on the A string, which is D. Then we're going to go down to the next string. Our pointer finger is going to get the 2nd fret of the D string. That's an E. Then we've got the 4th fret on the D string with our ring finger. That note's an F sharp. And then our pinky is going to get the 5th fret on the D string, and that's a G. So we're assigning our fingers 1 finger per fret, which is why I named the fingers that we're using 2. And this is really important because once we get this pattern down, middle, pinky, then the next string, index, middle, pinky, then the next string, index, ring, pinky, then we can do that starting on any note, and it becomes a different major scale depending on where we start. So we really don't need to know every other note in the scale, just the first note of it, and then have our pattern carry us through the rest of this. If this is confusing, I did another video up here, and this has different patterns that you can play for the major scale, but it'll clarify some of what I'm talking about here. So if we were doing G major, we start on a G. We do middle pinky on that 1st string, which is the 4th string really. Then we go to the A string and we do index, middle, pinky, and then the D string, index, ring, pinky. But if we wanted to do D major, we could find a D over here, which is the 5th fret on the A string, and do the same thing where we're starting on the A string, middle, pinky, index, middle, pinky, index, ring, pinky. But our middle finger was on the 5th fret on the A string, which means that the other fingers will be assigned to the frets just right next to where that finger is. So this way we only have to know the first note of the major scale, and then we can use that pattern. This is going to be really important in the next step. So you might be wondering, how does this apply to learning songs? Like, great that I know a scale and great that I know these notes, but we're going to use a thing called the Nashville number system in step 3 to know what to play, and somebody can just tell you a series of numbers and you'll be able to use that scale and this number system to know exactly what to play. The Nashville number system is giving each note in the major scale a number in the order that it happens. So forget frets for a second. We're not thinking about frets during this. We're thinking first note of the scale is G, so G is our 1. The second note of our scale is A, so A is our 2. The third note of the scale is B, so B is our 3, and so forth. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and you can either call this 8 or 1, because it's the same note, letter name-wise, as the first note of the scale. First note, second note, third note, fourth note, fifth note, sixth note, seventh note, back to the first, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. So now that we've got that, we've got a number assigned to each one of these depending on what scale we're in. So if you were at a jam and somebody comes up to you, they might say, this is a 1, 5, 6, 4 in the key of G. So you're like, okay, I'm in the key of G, so I'm going to be using that G major scale. That's what that tells you. And then you're like, 1, 5, 6, 4. So that's the first note of the G major scale is our 1. The fifth note of the G major scale is our 5. The sixth note of our G major scale is our 6. And the fourth note of the G major scale is our 4. So let's count up just to make sure we get what we're doing. So our 1 in the key of G is a G. G, first note of the scale. Our 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's going to be the fifth note of the G scale, which is going to be a D note. So far our 1 is G, our 5 is D. Now we got to go up to the sixth note because our next number is 6. 4, 5, 6. So that's an E. So now we got our 1 is G, our 5 is D, and our 6 is E. Now we're going to go to 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's our C note. If somebody comes up to you and they say, hey, this song is a 1, 5, 6, 4 in the key of G, they're going to be playing a chord for each one of those notes, but we're just going to have to worry about the root note. If they say 1, 5, 6, 4 in the key of G, it's going to be a 1, which is our G, our 5, which is D, our 6, which is E, and our 4, that's C. And then you just see how long they stay on each chord to know when to change. But there's one thing missing now. So we've got our notes, we've got a way to find them, and then now we need rhythm. What rhythm are we going to play, and how many times are we going to play each note? We don't really know. So step 4 is adding the rhythm to what we already know. So how do we get the rhythm in the first place? Well, if we're playing with a drummer, they're going to be playing all sorts of different drums, right? But they have one that their foot hits, and it's a really big drum on the ground. We call this the kick drum or the bass drum. So not by coincidence, that rhythm is the important rhythm that we need to know what to play. We want to lock in with what their foot is doing. There are some basic patterns that drummers do, and that foot on that really low drum, sorry, I'm trying to move my foot so you can see it. That low note is the bass note on their kit, and so we want to match the rhythm that they're doing with their foot. So before we can learn the rhythms, we really need a way to count rhythms. So we're going to learn how to count eighth notes. We're just going to count 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. And then we're going to subtract basically the ones that we don't do. So right now, I'm just going to clap along some common rhythms. This first one is called 4 on the floor, and this would be what their foot's doing, but I'm going to clap the rhythm. So 4 on the floor is just clapping every number that was said when we're counting. So we go 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So if someone's playing a 4 on the floor rhythm, they're just stomping on the downbeats, 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and. We're going to want to play 1, 2, 3, 4 with their foot. If they're going stomp, 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 we want to go note, 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 note. That makes sense? So that's the 4 on the floor rhythm. That's a really common dance rhythm. A lot of times people play at a much faster tempo. So if we were counting 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. That would be a 4 on the floor rhythm. So next we have half notes. So half notes get used a lot in country. This is where we're basically just playing on beats 1 and beats 3. So if we're counting 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, we're only playing when we say 1 and when we say 3. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. And obviously with different styles, there are different things we can do on the chord. Country would sound like 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, but it's much faster. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, or even faster than that, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. But that gives you an idea of what a half note groove sounds like. So now we have a common rock groove. It's basically hitting on 1, then 3 and. So we've got 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So that would sound like this on the bass. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So then the last thing we've got is a heartbeat rhythm, and this is used a lot in bossa nova and some other Latin styles. So sometimes if people say, hey, this is a Latin 1-5-6-4 in G, then you'll know to use the heartbeat rhythm. So this one sounds like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So you just repeat these as needed, and then you can figure out how long the chordal instrument, whether it's a ukulele, a guitar, a piano, however long they're staying on each chord is how long you're going to do that rhythm for. So if they're staying on there for 2 whole measures, 2 through cycles through 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, then you're going to stay on that one note for that whole entire time before changing to the next note. So I'll give an example of this in a second. If you don't have a drummer, you may have to use your musical intuition to know which groove fits the best. And one thing that I can recommend is if you're jamming with somebody, in the first little bit of the song, try these different ones out to see which one fits with them. And then once you find the one that fits best with what they're doing, stick with it. Because then you're being the drummer in that sense. You're being the bass drum as well as the notes of the bass. Alright, so step 5 is putting all this together, and basically somebody might come in with a chordal instrument, like the ukulele, and they might tell you, hey, we're going to do a 1-5-6-4 in the key of C, and you might notice that it has a bossa nova rhythm. They might tell you, oh, we're going to do it kind of Latin, or you might just pick that up by what the drummer's doing. So here we go. So that's our pattern. I've got it looped on a loop pedal. So now I got to figure out our numbers. We're in C major. So our 1 is going to be C. Our 5 is going to be G. Our 6 is going to be A. And then our 4 is going to be F. So those are the notes we're going to use to do this. Talk about what I'm doing here. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So it's just one measure on each. It's kind of a quick rhythm, but that's one example. So now this next one's a 1-4-5 in G with a rock groove. First thing you want to notice is that the last chord that they're on, they're staying on for twice as long. So that's 2 measures, where the rest of it's going to be 1 measure. So let's go over this again. It's a 1-4-5 in the key of G. So we need our G major scale first, right? And we're like, okay, so the first note, our 1, is a G, okay? And then our 4 chord is going to be a C, and then our 5 is going to be a D. And that's where the 5 goes. So now we're going to add that rock groove, which is 1, 2, and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3. Here we go. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and that's how we come up with a line. So let's do one more example. All right, last but not least, we're going to do a 6-2-5-1 in the key of A, and this is going to be a dance groove, so we'll probably use the 4 on the floor. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's our groove. Now we're going to hear the drummer going boom, 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 boom. So we hear that bass drum, boom, stomp, stomp, stomp. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And you get the idea. Okay? So now we got to figure out, we're in the key of A. So let's use the 5th fret on the E string. So first we got to get our 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so that's the 4th fret on the D string. Then we've got our 2. That's the 7th fret on the E string. Then we've got our 5. That's the 7th fret on the A string. And we've got our 1, which is where our middle finger was starting out. That's the 5th fret on the E string, which happens to be an A. It's 1, 2, 3, 4. 6, 2, 5, 1. And that's it. Alright guys, now you know what to do with a little bit of information if you're playing with somebody that knows some theory. They can just tell you those numbers, they can tell you what key, and then you can either figure out the rhythm, or sometimes they'll give you an idea of the rhythm, like, oh, it's a Latin tune, or oh, it's a rock song, or it's a dance song. So they might give you some information like that, and if they don't, you can always just try out the different rhythms and see which one fits the best. And you can do that in like the first minute of jamming with them. But if somebody doesn't know what they're doing, you have to develop your ear. So one way to develop your ear is you can start with that scale, and you can go from the first note of the scale to the second note, and practice kind of singing along with it. Oh. Then go from the first note to the third note and back to the first note. Oh. And then you get really good at hearing how far they are away from the initial note. You can kind of memorize these sounds in your head. It's a little bit more of an arbitrary concept, but it takes a lot of playing to do this and a lot of practice. But if you do, you might be able to hear the numbers, and once you can hear the numbers based off of the information that somebody's telling you about the key, then you can put that all together and help. And if you can't do that, you could always learn some guitar chords, some ukulele chords, and some piano chords so that you can see what they're doing. And then that way, if they don't know what information to give you, you can figure it out from learning a basic amount on each of those instruments. But that's it for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you on the next one.